It must be Tuesday or another day of the week because we have Nintendo Switch 2 rumors and predictions. And I am no stranger to making predictions and theories about the next Nintendo console myself. Whether it's the release date or how much more power it's gonna have compared to the Switch, I've made my fair share of videos in regards to the whole rumors and expectations for the Nintendo Switch 2. But today I want to talk about the concept of rumors, as I've noticed quite a few people get, quite frankly, burnt out on Nintendo Switch 2 rumors, and I can understand why. We are wholly at the mercy of Nintendo in this regard as to when they want and how they want to reveal the next Nintendo console. I would be shocked if they don't plan to do another console soon. I've said before, I think late 2024, early 2025 is the easy lock-in. Most consoles have about an 8-year lifespan. That's not a hard and fast rule, but as a general rule of thumb, that tends to hold true more often than it doesn't, at least recently. And the Nintendo Switch wasn't a powerful piece of kit when it first came out all those years ago, let alone with all the advancements and new technology the gaming industry has at its disposal nowadays. The Switch is simply far behind the competition, and I can't imagine Nintendo wants to keep taking a knee and running out the clock in regards to the Switch. The Switch has sold like a monster. It was an excellent return to form for Nintendo after the disaster that was the Wii U, despite the fact I love the Wii U. But the Switch rocketed off to extremely high praise, but also brought multiple different kinds of gamers together under one console, one ecosystem, by combining stay-at-home play alongside the portability of Nintendo's earlier consoles, this time combined into one piece of kit. And there's a lot of expectations for what Nintendo's next console should be and what it can have. I feel the obvious play is obviously to do the Switch again. Nintendo for a while now has experimented with different gimmicks for each console, something for the console to stand out and try and find an audience, as if throwing paint against the wall to see what sticks. Well, the Switch stuck, and I don't see any reason to move away from it when it combines the best aspects of nearly all the Nintendo consoles that came before, or at least a good chunk of them. But there's another nasty side when it comes to theory crafting or the rumor mill in regards to the Switch 2, and that is setting up loftier expectations than what may manifest into reality or is even feasible. I think if you believe that the Switch 2 will have the power of, say, a PS5 or an Xbox Series X, let alone a high-end gaming PC, you are setting yourself up for disappointment, because I also don't think the next Nintendo console needs to have that capability. The Switch sold well for a couple of reasons. One, it had the hybridization aspect to it, where you could play it on the go or at home, and that flexibility is something that a lot of people really like. Because even if you only play in one style, you can get the full experience because of that one style. You don't need to play it as a portable console or stay at home. You can play it either or and have a full experience and not feel like you're missing out on anything because of that. Also, the Switch was cheap. The only other console out there right now that kind of rivals the Switch in terms of price point is probably the Xbox Series S. But even then, I think the Switch is cheaper. And when you have a console that can play in a lot of different situations, bolstered by the fact that it's extremely cheap compared to the competition, that's going to draw a massive audience of people because it's simply more affordable and usable for a lot of people than a giant box that can't really move. Other consoles are starting to adapt with things like the PS Portal or, streaming and stuff like that, but that's a baked-in intended feature for the Switch. You coincide all of that with an absolute plethora of amazing high-quality Nintendo exclusives, and the Switch becomes an offer too enticing to be resisted for many people. How the Switch 2 is supposed to rival that, we don't know. And that's the fact of the matter. We don't know exactly, or even anything really, about the next Nintendo console. We can theorize, we can absorb the rumors and all that, but at the end of the day, what may end up being announced may not coincide with our expectations or what we want out of the console. And I think there's a component to the argument that it is unfair to judge something based on your own expectations, even if those expectations are unrealistic. At the end of the day, eventually Nintendo will announce another console. I think that's safe to say. And on that day, when we find out the price point and some key information about the next console, we all have to have a moment where we judge the information that is available to us and say, okay, for what is being offered here, and for this price point, do we as a consumer, and this is a very individual and personal question, do you think this is worth the money? And then the second question is, do you think it's worth the money compared to what's on offer from the competition? The next Nintendo console could be a disaster, it could be a massive success that dwarfs even, say, the Nintendo Switch. We simply don't know. But when we do know, we should argue, we should think about the next console, and communicate and discuss the next console solely with the information available, not what we expect or predict that it may have. Because that's going to be the key piece of information. The Switch 2, the Super Switch, whatever the next Nintendo console is, will be one of the most hyped up announcements in gaming history. It's important not to let our own predictions and expectations cloud our rational judgment. To think that it may have something when it may not. Or think that it won't have something when it very well may have something. Because at the end of the day, simply, we don't know. We don't know what it's going to have, what kind of power it's going to be. There's a lot of question marks in the air right now. For all we know, the next Nintendo console will have an Nvidia graphics card that is capable of frame gen and DLSS, all those goodies and AI tech that Nvidia has on offer now for PC, and has been constantly developing. For all we know, the next Nintendo console has that, and for all we know, it doesn't have any of that. I don't think anyone right now should immediately say to themselves that no matter what is announced, that you will get the next Nintendo console, because to me, that's not being a smart consumer. Wait, because there is no harm right now in simply waiting. Waiting to gather more information, to have a more solid grasp on the situation, and then make a more informed purchasing decision. That's being a smart consumer. Pre-ordering, more often than not, is setting yourself up for failure, and is setting yourself up for disappointment. And even being in the mental state to where no matter what is announced, you will buy it because you have to be loyal to Nintendo or whatever, is setting yourself up to be played. Now, you could have a low bar for what you want out of the next Nintendo console simply because you love Nintendo games. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no shame in that. But at the end of the day, remember, this is a business hell-bent on the sole idea of trying to gather as much money from you as the consumer as humanly possible. So you owe it to yourself to have as much information at your disposal as possible, and then make a decision solely for you about whether or not you think, with the information available to you, whether or not this is worth it for you. Not to let expectation or predictions cloud or alter your judgment, but to ground yourself in reality and the facts on offer. And the simple fact right now is we don't know anything about the Switch 2 for certain. We know extremely, really microscopic levels of information. We don't even know the name, we don't know the release date, they haven't even announced a thing. We don't know one game that's going to be on the Switch 2. We don't know if it's going to have backwards compatibility, we don't know anything. It's all guesswork and estimate right now. And some of that estimate and some of that guesswork is kind of enticing, incentivizing. I've made my own theories, my own predictions based on my own experience playing video games for so long, and what I think makes the most sense for the Switch 2. Remember though, this is Nintendo. Doing what makes sense isn't always what they do. They unironically called a console the Wii U. Bear that in mind. And this isn't even to say don't get yourself hyped up or don't give in and make some predictions or whatever, because honestly, theory crafting like that is fun. I enjoy it. Hell, I've done it before on this channel in regards to the Switch 2, because I like predicting and see if my predictions hold water. But you always have to understand and ground yourself in reality that they are simply just that, predictions. If my predictions all turn out to be wrong, I shouldn't let that color my judgment on the final product. Because I could not only be doing myself a disservice, but also with this channel, I would be doing you a disservice. If I'm completely off base with what I expect out of the Switch 2, that's fine. The discussion then pivots to, okay, with what is on offer and what is being talked about and announced, is this worth it? Now, this is different from having standards. For me, an important benchmark for the Switch 2 to hit This isn't a prediction. This isn't anything. For me, this is something that should be standard. This is something I want out of the Switch 2. And if it's not there, then to me, that will be a blemish one way or the other. All first-party titles should have a 60 FPS option. If a third-party game doesn't want to optimize for the console, that's whatever. If it's Zelda, or Mario, or Xenoblade, or any other Nintendo first-party title, the game should have a 60 FPS option baseline that I can choose and select because that's the experience I want. And for a console in 2024 or even 2025, that should be standard. And if it's not there, that will be one of my biggest critiques about the console. That's not a prediction, that's not an expectation, that's a spoiler. If it doesn't have that, that will be a negative for me. That is different from me saying, oh, the next console is going to have 5 different ways to input a game. It's going to have a Switch cartridge drive, it's going to have disc format, it's going to be digital only. Those are predictions. Those are separate from saying the console should at least be able to hit 60 FPS, which should have been the standard back in 2016. But especially for now, 60 FPS should be the standard for me. That's different from me saying that I think the smart play for Nintendo to do would be to have a Xenoblade X Definitive Edition, or remaster, or whatever, or port, available within that first year window. That's a prediction. But if it's not there, I'm not going to act as if the console should have had that. Would be really cool if it did, but if it doesn't, then it's whatever, and I'll judge the product based on what's on offer. Having a standard and having an expectation are two different things, and being able to differentiate those two things is extremely important for being a smart consumer. Because if you're not a smart consumer, you can give in and get played more often than not, and do yourself a disservice. And with that, I will call the video there for the day. Thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure for making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Stay safe, have a great day, go play some video games if you can, and as always, I'll see you all next time. Leave a comment down below with what you want out of the Nintendo Switch 2 and what you think it will have. Let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts, hear your opinions, and to hear your stories. Stay safe, have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again.